So it's this time of the season again. The season start, of course. With half of the player base not having paid attention to developer updates and the like, there was a huge outrage of players complaining about the results of the placer matches. However, what is done is done. There is reason and logic behind most of the things that happen, and now we have to deal with the rank that we're given. But we wouldn't be gamers if we didn't strive to climb as high as possible, which is why we'll talk about 5 tips and tricks that might help you rank up. So let's get right into it. Number 5. Play right now, or, well, play after you watch this video, I guess. It's been widely reported and has also been my and my friends' experience that the after placement adjustments are very harsh this time around. However, they are harsh in the player's favor. What I mean by that is that most players have reported gaining a lot of SR from winning their games, whilst losing only very little when ending up not victorious. That is not only very convenient, but also a huge morale boost. The reason I tell you to play right now is because I'm pretty sure that this won't last. I'm pretty sure of that because I think to remember that in one of the developer updates, Jeff Kaplan himself told us right that, but since I can't remember the exact video where he talked about that, and I'm too lazy to actually go back and look for it, I'll just tell you that I have a feeling. At any rate, while we don't know how exactly the matchmaking and SR distribution systems function, it seems like the latter wants you to prove that you belong to a higher division. I've heard from players who start off on lower ranks that when moving towards a new division, the SR gains have decreased a bit. I had a similar experience in Season 2 where I would always lose marginally more SR than I get for any victory, as though the game wanted me to prove that I belong to Diamond and have me work for it. Once I crossed the boundary, however, I had been granted rather favorable SR gains again. So do keep in mind that while these systems seem very generous right now, you will still have to work for the rank that you truly belong into. Number 4. Know every hero. Now, recurring subscribers might be a little confused at that statement since they know that I'm a big advocate for main roles rather than flex playing, but I'll get into that in a bit. The reason it's important to know every hero is not so you can play all of them to perfection when need be. What's more important than that is knowing how to deal with them when they are on your or the opposing team. It is important to have a rough idea of every hero's kit, their utilities and their cooldowns. This will help you tremendously in deciding how you want to approach an engagement, especially if parts of both teams have already died throughout the battle, and even more importantly in a 1 versus 1 situation. It is something that I have never put a lot of emphasis on in my videos because I expected a base level of expertise, but I have realized that always promoting mains might give away the wrong message in the grand scheme of things. So do make sure that you know every hero sufficiently to know what you can expect from your teammates and also how you should be handling enemies. Well, number 3 ain't as much of a surprise anymore, I guess. Find your mains and play them. Look, when it comes down to it, we all have a choice on which heroes we want to play, and a lot of people put a lot of thought into figuring out which heroes they want to improve on. I often hear people saying they want to get better at Genji or Tracer, since those are heroes that are perceived as carries, and it's not an entirely baseless assumption to make. After all, in the right hands, those heroes can cause a lot of damage. But when it comes down to practicing heroes, you usually have one of 3 choices. Practice heroes you're bad with in an attempt to get better, practice heroes you're alright with in hopes of becoming good, or take heroes that you already feel you're doing better on than others, and do your darn best to become great at them. If you have spent any sufficient amount of time on rank, chances are that you already have a handful of heroes you feel you do better on than others. I'd recommend taking those heroes and practice them a lot in quick play until you master them mechanically, and then go into rank to build a portfolio of competitive experience. As much as the concept of flex playing, meaning filling in whatever the team needs, is very popular and has a basic level of legitimacy in it, it only works well so long that your entire team knows what they are doing. I will bet anything on a team of mains stomping a team of flex players into the ground any day, provided they have a similar level of communication. And that's because flex players never invested time to truly become great with heroes in favor of being sufficient at all of them. Look, Overwatch is a game that looks very simple on the outside, and so do a lot of the heroes, but you'll never know what it takes to be a true main until you have played the hero a lot, and being exceptionally good at a handful of heroes will go a long way in your gameplay, making a bigger impact on the outcome of the match in favor of your team. And now the part that I hate, but the mandatory disclaimer for the segment whenever I bring it up. There is a clear emphasis on having multiple mains, as insisting on playing only one hero all the time can cause a lot of problems. Problems include being hard countered, for example, but also forcing your teammates into roles they're bad with, at which point it doesn't matter how good you are if literally everyone else is playing heroes they're trash with. Just please, this is a team game. Make sure you play heroes that work well together in the team. Make sure everyone knows what they're doing on their heroes. Don't restrict yourself too much by maining heroes. Even I as an Ana and Zenyatta main pull the occasional McCree, Symmetra or Lucio if I feel like have to. Number 2. Optimize your communication. For the sake of keeping this video short and concise, I won't get too in detail about this. If you do want a detailed guide on improving communication, do let me know down in the comment section below and I'll get to work on that ASAP. First and foremost, do make sure you join in team chat for every competitive match you play. There's also a function in the options menu that does that automatically. Once in the match, check and make sure that everyone is on voice comms. If not, ask them in chat to join. Do feel free to greet everybody to break the ice. Some people don't like being the first to say something, so it's always best to step out and do it yourself. I'm not sitting here telling you not to have fun, but for the sake of making this video try-hard focused, don't use voice chat if it's not necessary. Make sure all of your calls are short and concise. Do occasionally highlight good plays for the sake of team morale, but don't overdo it. Do not ever get toxic or pissy in voice chat. I don't care if you're an asshole in real life, but getting toxic literally diminishes your chances of winning. If you tilt your team by saying stupid things, they will play worse. If you get tilted, you also play worse. If you already are tilted, don't tilt the rest of your team so at least they can play at the best of their capabilities and carry your unthankful ass. At the end of the day, being toxic does nothing to improve your chances of winning and does a lot to make you lose. You can always push grandmas out of their wheelchairs afterwards if you think you really have to. And lastly, number 1. Know the meta, but don't worry too much about it. Now, that sounds a little contradictory at first and extremely pandering at the second glance, since there's this conflict in the community between people who are very meta-focused and those who aren't. When I say that you have to know the meta, I'm not talking about pro players. While yes, a lot of the things those guys do slowly makes its way onto the ladder on some points, such as for example more tank-heavy compositions towards the end of Season 2, and now at the start of Season 3, the pro meta isn't something we have to concern ourselves with on ladder. But that doesn't mean that this is the end of the discussion, because the meta still exists, however a little different than you might think. The meta simply refers to popular picks on the ladder, and that can look different to a lot of us. It can vary by region, for example, and it also varies strongly depending on your division. The higher you climb, the more precision-based heroes you will be encountering, while especially in the lower divisions you will see a lot of projectile-based and recently buffed heroes played more often. The reason it's so important to be aware of that is because you don't want to end up in a situation where your team is forced to swap their composition first. Every swap eradicates ultimate progression, which gives the enemies a clear advantage in terms of ult economy. But not only that, it's not like you wanna give the enemies the first 25% on King of the Hill maps, the first checkpoint on payload maps, or the first cap on control point maps. It's always good to be aware which heroes are popular on which map so you can suggest your team to preemptively counterpick. Like for example, making sure that you have a hit scan hero on a map where Pharah sees a lot of play. What I don't mean by saying know the meta is letting it restrict you entirely in your hero choice. Off-meta picks in particular can throw off a team that doesn't expect them, especially if the player in question is extremely competent on said hero. So don't start yelling at people for picking heroes that aren't popular, but try to make sure you are prepared to deal with heroes that you know see a lot of play. Now there are obviously more things that one can say in regards to ladder climb and what could possibly be helpful in progressing, like playing in a group for example. However, those are my personal top 5 tips that I always try to keep in mind when trying to ladder climb, and I feel like they might be helpful for some of you out there as well. Do feel free to drop me a like on your way out if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I hope to see you guys next time. Digga, und doubtet einfach mal den Symmetra-Pick, weißt du, ich carry hard, Bronze-Elims und der sagt, ich soll nicht Symmetra spielen, Alter. Spielst auf Offense.
Das Einzige, was Bronze war, war deine Skin.
Hast du nicht gesagt.